The ground beneath Los Angeles is under more stress right now than at any point since the Middle Ages. Today, not a vague projection, not a future possibility, loaded to a level of tectonic tension unseen for 1,000 years. 2.8 megapascals of force pressing on the rock of the San Andreas Fault. That is not a prediction. That is not a computer model's worst-case scenario. That is the measured, documented physical state of the Earth as of this morning. All of that stored energy is converging on a single point northeast of the city. A geological intersection called the Cajon Pass, the place where California's two most dangerous faults meet, the place scientists now call an earthquake gate. A gate that can either block a rupture or swing open and allow two earthquakes to become one. But here is the part no one is talking about. On July 10th, 2026, scientists using artificial intelligence found something else. Ghost earthquakes. 92 of them. Silent tremors that we never knew existed, changing the physics of the fault in real time. The warnings are no longer just about what is overdue. They are about what is happening right now, in total silence, a mile beneath the surface. Here is the number you need to hold in your head. 1,000 years. Not an exaggeration, not a dramatic turn of phrase, a documented time frame. The last time the southern San Andreas and San Jacinto fault systems carried this much accumulated stress. The Battle of Hastings had not yet been fought. It is a scale of geologic time that is almost impossible to comprehend, and it was confirmed on June 3, 2026. A landmark study led by geophysicist Dr. Lillian M.L. Burkhardt was published, and it did not predict an earthquake. It did something far more unnerving. It measured the load. To understand why that is different, you have to understand how California works. The state sits on the boundary between two colossal tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. They are grinding past each other at a speed of about 45 millimeters per year, roughly the same speed your fingernails grow. But they do not slide smoothly. Friction locks segments of the faults for centuries at a time. The plates keep moving, but the fault line stays stuck, straining, twisting, accumulating a debt of motion that must, eventually, be paid back in a violent lurch. Dr. Burkhardt's team calculated the size of that debt. They found the stress on the Mojave South segment of the San Andreas has reached 2.8 megapascals. The nearby San Jacinto fault is at 2.6. It is worth understanding what a megapascal of stress actually means. It is not a theoretical number. It is a precise technical measurement of force distributed over an area, like air pressure in a tire, but for the planet's crust. It is a measure of how close the rock is to its breaking point. And these numbers, 2.8 and 2.6, are higher than anything modeled in the region for the last millennium. Dr. Kate Scharrer, a geologist with the USGs and co-author on the study, put it simply. Because it's been quite a long time since the southern San Andreas or the San Jacinto have had a large earthquake, she stated, we've accumulated a lot of stress. The last time that stress was released in a major way was January 9, 1857, the Fort Cajon earthquake, a magnitude 7.9 monster that ruptured the San Andreas for over 200 miles. The ground shifted by as much as 30 feet in an instant. The shaking lasted for 1 to 3 minutes. It was one of the greatest earthquakes in American history. And the analysis from Burkhardt's team confirms that the stress levels now have surpassed the levels that triggered that colossal event. The system is not just back to where it was in 1856. It has been loaded far beyond that point. It has been accumulating strain for 169 years, piling it on top of a 1,000-year peak. In Dr. Burkhardt's own words, read them carefully right now. With stress at historically high levels across the region, the system is in a critically loaded state, not a warning for the future, a diagnosis of the present. And here is the part that should stop you cold. All of that unprecedented stress is aimed directly at California's most vulnerable point. What makes this more than a story about a record-breaking number is where that pressure is focused. It converges at a place called the Cajon Pass, a narrow gap in the San Gabriel and San Bernardino Mountains that funnels all the critical lifelines of Southern California. The I-15 freeway, the main artery, connecting Los Angeles to Las Vegas. The railroad tracks that carry billions of dollars in goods from the ports. The aqueducts carrying water. The pipelines carrying fuel. It is the geographic choke point for 20 million people. It is also where the San Andreas Fault and the San Jacinto Fault run so close they nearly touch. For decades, scientists treated them as separate threats, a big earthquake on one or a big one on the other. But the 2026 study revealed a terrifying new possibility. The pass acts as an earthquake gate. This is not a metaphor. It is a mechanical principle. Think of it like a locked door between two pressurized rooms. A rupture starting on the San Andreas could race south, and if it hits that gate at the right angle and with the right amount of force, it could blow the door open. The energy would not stop. It would jump the gap, transferring seamlessly to the San Jacinto Fault, triggering a second, immediate rupture. A chain reaction. A multi-fault megaquake. One continuous event that combines the power of both. The result would not be a magnitude 7.0. The models project a fused quake of up to magnitude 7.8. An event on that scale is not just a bigger earthquake. It is a different category of disaster. A magnitude 7.8 releases almost 16 times more energy than a 7.0. It is the difference between a city-altering event and a civilization-altering one. The shaking would not last for 30 seconds. It would last for minutes, rupturing the ground across a swath of Southern California wider than the state of Rhode Island. And the San Jacinto Fault is, in many ways, the bigger human threat. It runs directly through the hearts of San Bernardino, Colton, Moreno Valley, and Hemet, cities built directly on top of the fault line. The earthquake gate theory changes the entire risk calculation for California. It means the single greatest tectonic threat might not be the San Andreas alone, but its collision with the San Jacinto. Two loaded weapons aimed at each other, with the Cajon Pass as the trigger mechanism. The 1,000-year stress isn't just loading one fault, it's loading the entire system, pressing down on the gate, making it more likely that when one side finally breaks, it will take the other with it. The question is no longer just which fault will go first. It is whether the gate will hold. And just when scientists believed they had finally grasped the sheer scale of that threat, a discovery announced on July 10, 2026, proved they had been watching the wrong thing. They had been listening for a roar, when the real warning was total silence. Parkfield, California. It is a tiny town in Monterey County, but to seismologists, it is the most important place on Earth. Known as the earthquake capital of the world, it sits directly on top of the San Andreas Fault. It is the most heavily instrumented, most intensely studied fault zone on the planet. Scientists have wired it, drilled into it, and pointed every conceivable sensor at it, all in the hopes of catching an earthquake in the act. They thought they knew everything that happened there. They were wrong. A team of researchers led by Dr. Zara Zali at the Jeffs Helmholtz Center for Geosciences in Germany decided to try something new. They took 8 years of data, from 2009 to 2016, gathered from incredibly sensitive borehole strain meters, instruments buried deep in the earth that measure microscopic stretching and compressing of the rock. They fed all of it into a deep learning artificial intelligence. They asked the AI to look for patterns humans might have missed. The AI found them, 92 of them. It detected 92 separate, previously unknown slow slip events. Before getting into what that means, it is worth understanding what a slow slip event actually is. The term is sometimes used casually. It is not casual. It is a precise designation for a genuinely strange and unsettling phenomenon. A slow slip is a silent earthquake. The fault moves. The rock slides. Stress is released. But it happens over hours, or even days instead of seconds. There is no violent shaking, no jolt, no sound. The ground deforms by millimeters, silently beneath our feet. For decades, we had no idea these were even happening with any regularity. As Dr. Zali explained, we wanted to know if important slow displacement processes might be hidden in years of continuous deformation measurements. Artificial intelligence enabled us to recognize their patterns, which would otherwise have gone unnoticed. Unnoticed is the key word. We were blind to them. We had the data, but we couldn't see the signal in the noise. The AI could, and what it revealed was profoundly disturbing. These silent slips are not harmlessly venting pressure. The opposite is true. The study found that these slow slips are systematically followed by an uptick in low-frequency earthquakes. They are not a release valve. They are a prelude. They are priming the fault, subtly changing the stress on nearby locked sections, pushing them closer to a violent, catastrophic failure. They are the quiet before the storm, a part of the earthquake cycle we were completely missing. And remember where they found this. Parkfield, the most watched piece of geology on the planet. If 92 ghost earthquakes happened there, right under our most powerful microscopes, and we never saw them, a chilling question emerges. How many are happening everywhere else? On the critically loaded sections of the San Andreas in the south, near the earthquake gate at Cajon Pass? We have no idea. The discovery didn't just add a new piece to the puzzle. It suggested the puzzle itself was infinitely larger and more complex than we ever imagined. It proved that the ground is shifting in ways we don't understand, and that the final push toward the next big one might not come from a tremor we can feel, but from a silent slip that only an AI is clever enough to detect. The threat is not just existential in the south. 400 miles to the north, a different fault running through one of the most densely populated urban corridors in America is also overdue. And a separate set of discoveries from 2026 revealed that when it finally breaks, the damage could be amplified by 50%, turning a predictable disaster into a catastrophe that engineers never planned for. The Hayward Fault. A 74-mile long crack in the earth running along the western base of the East Bay Hills, directly through Berkeley, Oakland, Hayward, and Fremont. It is considered by the USGs to be one of the most dangerous faults in the country, largely because of what it runs underneath. Homes, hospitals, schools, a major university, and the entire infrastructure of the East Bay. Its last major rupture was on October 21st, 1868, that earthquake, with an estimated magnitude of 6. 8 was known as the Great San Francisco Earthquake until 1906 came along and stole the title. It killed 30 people and caused widespread destruction. The historical rupture cycle for the Hayward Fault is estimated to be between 95 and 183 years. The average is about 140 years. As of today, July 13th, 2026, it has been 158 years. It is not just in the window of danger, it is deep inside it. The USGs gives it a 33% probability of a magnitude 6.7 or greater rupture before the year 2043. But new research shows those numbers only tell part of the story. In the spring of 2026, seismologist Dr. Arben Pitarka and his team at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory released the results of 50 new supercomputer simulations. They modeled a magnitude 7. Zero quake on the Hayward Fault, with a level of detail never before possible. What they found was alarming. In specific areas, the ground shaking could be up to 50% stronger than all previous models had predicted. The cause was not the fault itself, but the ground on top of it. Deep geological basins in the East Bay, filled with softer soils and sedimentary rock, act like a lens for seismic energy. Instead of letting the earthquake's waves pass through and dissipate, these bowls trap the energy. They reflect it, amplify it, and focus it. Dr. Pitarka's simulations showed these basins in Oakland, Berkeley, and the Livermore Valley acting like acoustic mirrors, creating pockets of catastrophic amplification. A 50% increase in shaking intensity is not a minor adjustment. It is the difference between a building standing and a building collapsing. It means a house that was built to code, designed to withstand a 7.0, could be hit with forces far exceeding what its engineers prepared for. The ground literally shakes harder and for longer in these specific zones. Living a few miles further away from the fault might not make you safer. If you live on one of these ancient geological lenses, you could be in more danger than someone living directly on top of the rupture. This lens effect fundamentally redraws the hazard map for the Bay Area. The threat is not a uniform wave of destruction. It is a targeted, focused attack, with the local geology deciding which neighborhoods will experience the worst of it. The 1868 quake happened in a sparsely populated region of farms and small towns. Today, Millions of people live on land that new science says will shake 50% harder than we ever thought possible. So we have three distinct, deeply troubling lines of evidence, all emerging in 2026. They are not related in the sense of a single conspiracy, but as symptoms of a planetary system reaching a breaking point. In the South, 1,000 years of stress loaded onto two faults that can fuse into one. In the central section, silent, invisible earthquakes priming the system for failure. In the north, the ground itself waiting to amplify the destruction when the rupture finally comes. The science of seismology has pivoted. For a century, the public asked a simple question: can you predict the day? And for a century, the honest answer was no. That question may have been a distraction. The new science is not asking when, it is measuring how much. How much stress is in the rock? How is it being transferred? Where will the shaking be worst? These are questions that, for the first time, we are beginning to answer with chilling precision. That is the real warning of 2026. It is not a psychic prediction. It is not an esoteric model. It is a set of physical measurements. From Dr. Burkhard's stress calculations, from Dr. Zolli's AI, from Dr. Pitarka's supercomputer simulations. They are all reading the same planetary gauge. And the needle is in the red. The gun is not just loaded. We can now measure the precise tension on the trigger spring, and it is worth being perfectly clear about what happens next. The popular misconception is that California will dramatically crack and fall into the ocean. That is not reality. The San Andreas is a strike-slip fault. The land on the west side is sliding horizontally northward on a slow-motion journey toward Alaska. The disaster is not a cartoonish plunge into the sea. It is a violent, sideways jerk that will sever the arteries of modern civilization. The roads, the aqueducts, the power lines, the fiber optic cables. Everything that allows a mega region of 40 million people to function. A magnitude 7. 8 jump across the Cajon Pass gate would not be like the 1994 Northridge quake. It would be a regional cataclysm, rendering huge swaths of Southern California impassable and uninhabitable for weeks or months. A 7.0 on the Hayward fault, amplified by the lens effect, would be the single most expensive natural disaster in American history, causing hundreds of billions in damage to the heart of the tech economy. These are not screenplays. They are the documented, physically plausible consequences of the data that landed on scientists' desks this year. The silence from the faults has been misinterpreted for decades as safety, as time to build more, expand further, and push our cities deeper into the hazard zone. The great discovery of 2026 is that the silence was not peace. It was pressure building. 1,000-year-long inhale, with the exhale long overdue. The final warning, when it comes, may not be a foreshock that rattles the windows. It may have already arrived. A quiet signal in a strain meter, a new pattern found by an AI, a number in a scientific journal that proves, with mathematical certainty, that the long wait is almost over. The Earth itself has sent the message.